something that breaks at home, whether it's an electric toothbrush, a printer, a set of headphones, a blender, a laptop, and simply not knowing what to do about it because you didn't know who you could trust to repair it, and ended up not even knowing what to do about getting rid of this and potentially turning it to a reuse and recycling center. I ended up just keeping it somewhere hidden at home. Yes, exactly. So this is why we started the Restart project, to change the way we relate with technology and help find alternative viable solutions for exactly these problems, and helping us learn new skills in the meantime. It often happens that we are so struggling with technology to an extent that we'd just like to smash it and destroy it because it's really driving us insane. And at the same time, we are desiring a much shinier, latest generation version of all kinds of gadgets, and we can't wait to follow up on the latest tech news, and we hope that finally the one device that fixes all the problems has been finally released. And however, the next week there's a new one that maybe is a little bit better, and et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, all these things together also mean that we've kind of lost a little bit of a muscle for repair. We're becoming repair obese in a sense. And we chose as a mascot for some of our work Wally, because we think it's a true hero in trying to help us understand the masses of waste that we are surrounded by. So 3 years ago in London, almost just for fun, we ran an event for the first time called the Restart Party, where people with all kinds of repair skills come together and help each other and help people who come with something broken that would like to repair. And we ran this event and we knew almost no one at the time. We only knew one person who would help us repair, and we ran it in a pub. And I knew a little bit about how you increase the memory in a computer or speed up a laptop full of too much software that needs to be streamlined a little bit. And a lot of people came, and including this one person called, actually I forget his name right now, although I keep running into him occasionally. He brought this wonderful alarm clock, and well, whether you like it or not, what was beautiful about it was that at the end of that afternoon in a pub in North London, that alarm clock worked again, and his smile tells you something about what's really crucial about reappropriating our relationship with things that we like and love and use on a daily basis, and understanding what's laying beyond what is otherwise, as someone said earlier this morning, a black box, impenetrable. And what's happening is that more and more the black boxes that we use on a regular basis, not only there's so many and they increase every day, but they're increasingly harder to take apart, to disassemble, and to fully understand. And while we use them all of the time, we literally, from the moment we wake up to the moment we fall asleep, and some of us also to count how we sleep at night, at the same time we have lost the ability to make sense of all of that. So we started running these events, and at the heart of them is actually collaboration and bringing people together. And a little spoiler, tomorrow we're running one here as part of the festival between 11 and 3. So come along for that, and bring something that you would like to repair with us. And the idea is that people who have certain skills and would like to share them will be there on hand, and you will learn how to make sense of the fault you're experiencing together with them. It's highly collaborative, and it's not about competing with the commercial repair sector, not at all. It's in fact a way to inspire people to understand the repair needs we have as societies, and to inspire a different approach in regards to the way we choose the technology we use, and also the way we relate to the way it's made. So people like Ben, pictured here, come, and he has a lot of experience in fixing electronics. He works when he doesn't study as an engineer. He works in an electric guitar shop to repair guitars. And we have, at our events, we inspire people that can be as young as the kid he was working with here, or as old as people who are pensioners. We have created, apologies for that, we have created a toolkit that people can download in order to learn how to run similar events all over the world. We have supported and inspired people to replicate these events all over the world. So who is a restarter? Now, this is quite crucial. We started, and as I said earlier, we didn't know at all who could repair what. But what we quickly realized is that there's a very huge amount of repair skills available all over our communities. It's just that the change in priorities that a throwaway society has brought with it has been such so that such skills have become increasingly more difficult to spot and not so visible. So running these events actually brings these skills back and help people to realize that the answer is often within our communities. People like Philip, who has been an engineer for all of his life and recently started being a pensioner, and actually is incredibly active. He started with Restart, but now teaches classes and after-school clubs in his hometown, where he helps girls take apart iPhones and learn how the battery can be changed. All of this inspired by working and collaborating with us. But people like Faraz, who is a maker and used to work in a school as a lab technician, but then decided to pursue his career as a maker, and he works with us in some of our events and then goes on and create open source audio installations as well. Now, I said that we've created an international community around this. We now have events in 8 different countries, and the latest one, well, is Barcelona in Spain, where the first Restart party will happen in this Saturday. We're very excited that every group is kind of reinterpreting the concept in its own way, so bringing along different elements and redesigning some of the tools, the graphic tools that we gave to the community. And basically, this has been possible because we started completely as volunteers, and we've always had an ethos of being completely open about the work we do and trying to inspire others, reminding them that it's incredibly easy to get started, and you don't have to promise the world. You don't have to pretend that you can fix everything and anything. You have to be honest about your limits and learn collaboratively. And the more you do, the more you learn. And that's why it's a good opportunity to share it with you, because it can be replicated in all kinds of different ways. In one case, in London, we are working with the borough of Havering in East London, at the border of London, in trying to create a way so that the council can inspire directly with communication campaign and the uptake of a different approach, while they design a new way to also collect electronic waste at the end of its life cycle. And in other places, we've just happened to be throwing events completely bottom up with a very grassroots approach without any source of funding, really. And people do it because they have a set of different motivations. So it could be around learning more about the technology that you already have, or being thrown a challenge that you wouldn't otherwise have a chance to explore just with the equipment that you have sitting at home. So a part of the fun and of the social element of these events is that the volunteers don't necessarily know what will be brought to an event, and so it brings a certain level of thrill. This is not a job, but this is something that people do to get a different level of gratification. However, we do have to survive like everyone else, and so we call ourselves a social enterprise because we've tried and succeeded to bring different models, slightly more professional version of these events with the best members of our volunteer community interested also in working with us and bringing the events to workplaces. And so inspiring people in organizations in trying to think differently about the way electronics are used at work, and both by individuals and for the organizations, which can mean a different approach to the way we procure electronics in the first place, reducing the amount of electronics that are not so repairable or not provided with sufficient support by manufacturers at the end of a warranty period. And we've also experimented with bringing the events to the retail world. This spring, we ran an interesting series of events inside Selfridges in London, which you would think is quite the opposite ethos of an organization like ours, but actually it was interrogating what is the future of work and what is the future of a repair, actually, just reinventing how we create longer-term relationship between someone that sells a product and someone that might maintain that product and keep it in circulation for a longer period of time. Now, all of this is great, and I'm really happy we have run more than 185 events, and there's many more coming, and the more groups get involved, the more events are multiplying across the world. It's fantastic. We have many more countries that are interested in starting their own activities. But the reason, aside from having fun and trying to learn new skills, is also to get a better understanding about the amount of waste that we collectively tend to generate in terms of electronics. It's fairly public knowledge at this point that electronic waste is the fastest growing stream of waste across Europe, between 2 and 5% year on year. And it's also fairly known that about 23% of all the electronic waste that is brought to reuse and recycling centers, but is actually not reused, because this is quite common, actually could be reused and repaired in an economically efficient way. And so this really demands questioning what is our model for understanding when a product is still worth repairing and reusing on. And this has been inspired for us by both myself and my co-founder Janet lived for long periods of time in the global south, in places like Kenya, Brazil, and East Timor. And what happens in these countries is that for a lot more people compared than here, throwing something away when it breaks will simply not even be a thought. And obviously there are cost considerations in regards to the cost of labor and how paying someone that would repair this very clicker in a country like Kenya would be much cheaper compared to buying a new one. But actually we probably pushed the limit so much, valuing the time involved in finding a repair solution so little compared to valuing the immediacy of clicking a button and ordering a new model off a website, that we need to rethink that a little bit. In terms of electronic waste, we have saved, or as well, meaning prevented, approximately 1.4 tons of electronic waste, which is really little when you think about the size of the problem. It's really a small fraction. However, it shows that there is a massive potential for doing more if just a group of volunteers that meets 3 hours every other week or so can do that much. It begs to demand the question, what do we do about our products? Now, one of the reasons I'm here is to try to change a bit our understanding of the role of extending the lifespan of products. And this is something that we've learned over time. Now, this graph represents an interesting fact, which is that over 83% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions involved in a device like an iPhone actually is to do with the manufacturing stage of that product. If you put together that plus the 4% that is spent in transporting that device from the place of manufacturing in China all the way to your home, actually it leaves about 12% that is the energy used by you in its operation. Now, there's a lot of pressure often on green gadgets and trying to get on the bandwagon that you'll upgrade because then something will be more efficient, more green. And actually that is quite not the case for devices which do not use most of the energy during the usage period. Obviously, for a fridge, it would be different. But the vast majority of our consumer electronics, this is absolutely simply not the case. Now, that was the iPhone 5S, which had 75 kilograms of CO2 emissions. Now, move on to the following year, where the phone became larger, and actually the emissions became larger, even larger than the increase in size. And so this keeps growing to an extent because actually for the first time in 2015, the just recently released iPhone 6S for the first time shows a decrease in the greenhouse emissions, mostly due in the use of recycled aluminum for the case of the phone. Although there's controversy here, and I am personally not an expert to the extent of criticizing this, but part of people who work in life cycle assessments are criticizing this move by saying that actually there's a finite amount of recycled aluminum that used to be used by someone else, and now it's used by Apple. So actually, it's a saving per se on that product, but it still doesn't address the issue that in this case, 84% of all of the emissions have to do with the manufacturing. Now, all these numbers mean a lot or not that much, and so we're trying, as we develop better ways to understand for all of us what this all means, we are moving to trying to visualize this information in better ways. So for an average mobile phone, smartphone, approximately 35 kilograms of CO2s are involved in its manufacturing. Now, that equals to 16 weeks of doing laundry, for example. And that isn't that much. However, there is one fact that 1.9 billion of these devices are currently sold every year. And 75% of them are currently smartphones, increasingly so, as so-called dumb phones are becoming less and less commonplace, even in other continents. Now, what that means is that the 68,000 tons of kilotons of CO2s are equivalent to the full emissions of a country like Austria. Now, what does this have to do with the Restart project and the way we relate to technology? This has to do with regaining control of how long we're going to use our devices for, and whether repairing them and maintaining them and making sure that we keep them in operation in the best possible way so that we continue benefiting from them actually makes sense. If we were all to extend by 1/3 the amount of time that we continue using these devices before they end their life, we will be saving the amount of emissions equivalent to what Singapore makes. And this is just a mobile phone. Just imagine this in the context of everything else that we use in our lives. And that's why we think that we need to really unleash a different approach to the way these products are designed, to try to bring together all the brightest minds that have brought together brilliant interfaces and wonderful new ways to put pressure on the screen so that we can have more control of the devices in interesting ways, but actually try to reassess the way the products are made to increase their durability and also potentially to decrease more drastically the impact that manufacturing has. Now, the Restart project recently started monitoring more severely, more carefully, the amount of things that we repair and how that also translates in impact in terms of the carbon footprint that we prevent through our activities. And we've started also having much more of an understanding of how well we can repair different categories of devices. Now, for example, and this is data that we're still working on as we've developed a tool to monitor all the activities that we do as well as the activities that people in our wider network across the world are doing. We know that we are quite effective at repairing things like laptops. So we get 24% of all the things that come to us during our events tend to be laptops, and we can fix approximately 50% of them, 49%. We are extremely good at repairing headphones. So if you have a headphone hanging somewhere tomorrow, try to bring it and we'll see what we can do. There are not that many, the headphones we do, but the faults tend to be quite similar, often to do with resoldering a connector so that the headphones still work stereo, not mono. And we tend to be pretty bad with mobile phones. So 10% of the things that people bring are mobile or smartphones, but we can only fix 1 out of 3. What does this mean? Certainly that the kind of skills required for these devices are fairly specialistic, especially because things like water damage can be extremely tricky to be repaired or fixed. That requires micro-soldering, which is something we cannot do during such an event. But it must mean something also about the way these products are designed. And so we should collectively understand how to look ahead when we choose a product to use, how to put all of these different perspectives together. At the heart of this is our ongoing campaign, which we are never tired of continuing to spread, which is that the most ethical mobile phone is the one you already have. So you should try to make the most of it and don't be too distracted by campaigns that are trying to push you to sign up to a contract that would allow you to upgrade unlimitedly. I'll invent this word for you, so that you can sign up, and as long as you keep paying, you get a new one. And this is a very worrying trend that we've seen developing over the past 3-4 months, where carriers in both the United States and now in the UK, and manufacturers such as Apple are trying to help increase the speed of upgrade. They're not happy with a 22 to 24 month upgrade rate cycle. They'd like us to move towards a 12-month rate cycle. And that's probably because they know that they're reaching saturation in the amount of sales. And we really don't think this is necessary. Although, of course, they do reuse devices that you have to send back to them and they resell them in another market, I'm sure. They, however, are not transparent at all about these practices. And we as consumers, as people, we are left hanging, not knowing exactly how to make a decision because we don't have all the information available about who is doing what and how these life cycles and lifespans are extended. So what do we see happening in the future, and what do we want to inspire in the world? Certainly the emergence of new business models around repair. We are completely aware that community repair events like the ones we host are just one small part in this solution, and we want to see them inspiring a new generation of repair businesses and creating the conditions, which include support from local authorities, for such initiatives to really spark a revolution in the way waste is seen, not as waste, but as something that can be fixed. And that can also include having more proactive collaboration so that reuse and recycle centers are actually more targeting reuse and less recycling. In London at the moment, there are big billboards all over from a consortium that collects waste for 7 boroughs in London. And what we see there is a promotion of a reuse and recycling. But actually, we know that only white goods out of that equation are reused, and computers at times are, but all the rest is not by default. We've seen the guidelines, they are recycled, period. So I think the public should demand more transparency to better understand what is it that really gets reused as opposed to recycled. And it's probably better for everyone. It will probably highlight more opportunities, maybe to recoup spare parts that can be reused, to reduce the cost of commercial repair, and many other things that we haven't even thought about can happen. Now, we also know that in the future, more repairable devices might appear again. And actually, we've just had a wonderful experience this weekend at the London Design Festival, doing a live teardown of the new Fairphone smartphone, which actually has been built with repairability at the heart of it. And it's, for the first time, it's a device that we actually find incredibly exciting in the way it has literally put together new concepts, such as connectors that cannot break, or screens that can be replaced without even needing a screwdriver. I couldn't believe it myself, but actually they've done it. And quietly, while tons of other companies much bigger than them keep talking about modularity, but actually they just keep postponing after year when something like that will become available commercially. So, and they're a social enterprise, and I think they deserve support for that. And however, the role of all of us in this room in understanding what the limits are and how we can make a difference ourselves is not to be discounted. One of our volunteers, Toshi, is by day an IT specialist that often has to work with clients that promote proprietary solutions, and by night, a bit like a Batman, actually promotes a different way of doing things. So installing operating systems based on Linux, such as the one that's powering the computer I'm using right now, and helping people to understand that a small upgrade in a very old computer, perhaps adding a bit of memory or changing a hard drive with a solid-state drive, can tremendously increase the performance of a machine. And so he's come up with this very provocative equation that I would like to leave you with, which is, when you think about how old your computer is, take 5 years out. So if your computer is 7 years old, actually think about it as being a 2-year-old computer. And if it's still a bit slow, add a bit more memory or change its hard drive, and you'll be surprised. The gains linked to Moore's law in recent years for processing power have not really been that amazed for the kind of laptop machines we use. Certainly, miniaturization has meant the battery life in brand new devices is incredibly higher compared to machines that are 5, 7 years old. But maybe for lots of operations, we don't need the latest and the greatest. And making sense of this can help us drive future purchases at an individual level, at an organizational level as well, where we can make the most difference. And one last thing, we also see interesting experiments, for example, from a not-for-profit called Tech for Trade, which is working on trying to find ways to reuse spare parts from devices that are no longer in operation, to work on new projects such as 3D printers to be used in developing regions where e-waste abound just as much as here, but actually people are probably more willing to go the extra mile and find the spare parts that can help build new technology as well. Thanks very much. Don't despair, just repair and learn a new skill in a fun way. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful, Ugo. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions for Ugo?
It's not so much a question, more a statement. I think people need to be less frightened as well of having a go themselves. I mean, I've had a friend telling me, oh God, I need to get a new fridge because the milk tray's broken. No, you don't. You go on the internet, you Google it, you buy a new part, you stick it on. I've fixed washing machines by Googling it. And I think people are frightened. You know, if it's broken, you're not going to break it anymore. You might as well roll your sleeves up, have a look on the internet and see if you can fix it yourself.
Well, that's definitely the case. I mean, of course, depending on the device and on the type of intervention, we can't just say as a blanket statement, go out and fix it yourself, because there's safety issues depending on what you're doing. But there's a lot of things that we can do either ourselves or as we promote through our events, together with someone who perhaps has done it before in the past. And so collaboratively, you lose that fear, you meet someone that might give you some helpful advice and help you make sense of that YouTube video and trying to find other sources or help you find the right spare part. But absolutely, I mean, that can be done. It's happening anyway, but it's still in a sense fringe, and we need to help everyone be able to make that decision.
Richard, I'm fully behind this because I repaired a hard disk recorder with a 6 pence capacitor. I didn't do it. Somebody had a solderer that knew exactly what to do, but I took the thing apart. But I'm well up for all of that. But how do we stop the software designers making software use more data? I'd never upgrade a phone, but it won't operate now. You know, the one that I've always had because of the software that keeps coming out. So they've as much to take, you know, to help with this as we have, haven't they? Any suggestions or thoughts on how we can?
Well, I mean, in terms of our own approach, let's say in the case of smart devices, we tend to remind people that actually a not so smart device is probably advisable often. Take an example of smart TVs and smart DVD players. I used to personally have one that would have an app for YouTube and an app for the BBC iPlayer, and both of them got discontinued because software moved on and Google killed a certain API, and the iPlayer thought, BBC thought that it was too expensive to continue support all of these different versions. Obviously, if you use your laptop to connect to the TV instead, you're more likely to be able to continue using those apps. But that's just one layer. I think we need to help the culture around software development also evolve to keep in mind the importance of supporting longevity in products. So doing everything that can be done in order to support products that are already out there. And that's why actually it's quite hard to make a pro or anti statement about a specific company, because one might have questions around the hardware upgradability of a certain brand or its repairability score, but perhaps that company fares better in terms of keep the software up to date for longer periods. we need to demand it with a much stronger voice. And there are good alternatives. For example, the Firefox browser keeps supporting even Android 2.3 devices, for instance, which are not supported by much more fancier browsers. But you have to pick and choose and be aware of the trade-offs, absolutely.
Super, thanks.
Just a similar question on warranties. Often phones smash and you can repair them, but it invalidates the software warranty, which is the question I had, trying to get someone to the restart party. So they went and took it to a repair shop and got it fixed. They still got it repaired because it was new. But
warranties are a big issue, absolutely. And actually, we always recommend to people that if something breaks within their warranty period, they should first contact the manufacturer. And actually, most people are not fully aware of their rights. And that's another layer. It's not necessarily our strongest area of work. There's other organizations, a Citizen Advice Bureau, that actually is much more vocal on these topics. But actually, we see all the time people that might come to an event and they've upgraded their tablet, or they attempted to upgrade the software on their tablet. As a result, the tablet doesn't power up anymore. And certain brands provide 2-year warranty in the UK on these products. And actually, what's happening is that people have so many devices and they don't seem to have enough time to take care of knowing what the different rules and regulations are for these devices. In a sense, a frugal answer to this would be, okay, try to limit the amount of devices that you have, but make sure that you know as much as you can about them. And maybe you should be aware of the policies that each company has and push them to actually deliver on them. If you break the screen of a device, however, that only is covered by some specific more insurance rather than warranty plans. And so if you're on one of those, okay, you should go for it. Otherwise, you're absolutely right that if you have the screen replaced by a non-authorized operator, or like at an event like the ones we have, it might invalidate the warranty. So we always remind people about this problem, because we wouldn't want someone to then have a fault that's not linked to having broken the screen and not being able to claim warranty on this. But actually, we do need much more easily understandable information about warranties and what people can and can't claim. And we should also demand that the quality of service by manufacturers when warranty repairs are performed is up to standards. I've heard stories of people who sent back for a repair because of a screen crack that was a design fault, a mobile phone, and it took the company a month to send it back. So when you do that, you're literally inspiring people to go out and buy something else. And so this is the real problem, not lack of availability of a quality service, lack of quality spare parts, or easily accessible spare parts, or the pricing of the spare parts ridiculously high so that people might feel that it's not worth it to have a repair. So these are all themes that we all, as citizens, we need to be aware and get organized to make our voices heard and push back.
Super. No, thanks very much, Ugo. Another question there.
I was just going to add on to that. There's the other thing about cost as well. People always go for the cheapest of everything, and quite often it's a mistake. You pay a bit more, like a laptop, you can get it from cheaplaptops.com, or you can buy it from Dell with a warranty where people will actually fix it for you. And that's another sort of thing to take into account. We always go for the cheapest. We don't go for paying a bit more to guarantee that we get a bit more quality and a bit more support.
I agree, absolutely. Yeah, and warranty considerations and the quality of service, after-sales service is a big issue, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Ugo. I think a round of applause for Ugo. That was
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you.